So, welcome back. So, in this quest for building AI, and AI is such a popular word nowadays that everybody keeps talking about AI doing this, AI doing that, and so on. How do we recognize that we are looking at intelligent behavior or some kind of intelligence, some kind of embodied intelligence? So, Alan Turing said quite some time ago that the question of whether machines can think is itself too meaningless. He said that we do not even know what is thinking mean and so on, and he prescribed a test which he called as the imitation game, which is now known as the Turing test. So, all of us call it the Turing test, and he wrote about this in this paper in 1950, Computing Machinery and Intelligence. So, what this Turing test says, or what his imitation game says, is that can a machine imitate a human being? So, if you are a human judge and you are sitting on a teletype in those days, or in modern times if you are typing on your mobile phone, who is responding to you from the other side? That somebody that you cannot see or something that you cannot see. Is it a human being or is it a machine? Turing said that if the machine can imitate human responses a significant portion of the times, then you must accept that they are intelligent essentially. But this test relies exclusively on our ability to handle language essentially, because in 1950 we were nowhere near the possibility that machines could interact with us in English, for example. Uh, though since then there has been rapid progress, starting with this program called ELIZA, uh, which was written by Weizenbaum, which could take your input sentence, twist it around and throw it back at you. And human beings are very good at anthropomorphizing about what we see essentially. And nowadays we have chatbots which make us think that we are talking to an intelligent creature. So, more recently Hector Levesque has proposed a new test for intelligence, and you can read about this in this book, which is meant to be a book meant for lay persons. It is not a textbook or a very technical book. He says that given the advances in web data processing, corpus based natural language processing and clever distracting techniques, it has become easy to build conversational chat bots that are impressive, but lack intelligence. And then he has proposed a new test, which was originally also proposed by Terry Winograd, and these are called as Winograd schemas in his honor. And Hector Levesque says that this is like an alternate Turing test. So, the idea behind Winograd schemas is that you ask a pointed multiple choice question that requires knowledge of the subject matter. So, we want to emphasize on the fact that the person or the entity or the machine responding to the question should be able to do that only if that person or entity has knowledge about the domain. So, for example, in contexts where give can appear are statistically quite similar to those where receive can appear, and yet the answer must change depending on which one is used. So, if a story is describing the word give, a story or a sentence, or receive, then their meaning changes quite a bit. This would make the test Google proof in the sense that you cannot write a program which will access the net and look for similar questions and somehow discover the answer and throw it back at you. because that process works without meaning essentially. It is just looking at a way of recognizing text and generating answers based from there. The claim is that doing better than guessing requires subjects to figure out what is really going on. We will see some examples. So, the key test in Vinograd schemas is anaphora resolution, which means you have pronouns and you have to resolve as to what that pronoun is referring to. So, a Vinograd schema challenge consists of 3 parts: a sentence or a brief discourse that contains the following: 2 noun phrases of the same semantic class, for example, male, female, inanimate, group of objects or people; an ambiguous pronoun that may refer to either of the above 9 noun phrases. So, your sentence must have 2 noun phrases and a pronoun which refers to one of them, and a special word and an alternate word, such that if the special word is replaced by the alternate word, the natural resolution of the pronoun changes. So, if you use the first word, then the pronoun refers to the first noun phrase, and if you use instead the second word, it will refer to the second noun phrase. So, the idea behind the Vinograd schema is to give one of those 2 sentences using one of those 2 words and then ask as to who does the pronoun refer to. So, the test is a question asking the identity of the ambiguous pronoun, and 2 answer choices have to be given, and the user or the entity or the person answering the test or quiz must have to choose one of them. So, you see that we have moved away from this facility of language, that this machine can speak English. So, it must be like a human in some sense. Now, we are saying that we are not testing your linguistic abilities, we are testing your reasoning abilities. You are not this thing, that can you reason enough to pick the correct choice out of 2 choices that are given you. So, we will look at some examples here. So, a machine will be given the problem in a standardized form, which includes the answer choices, thus making it a binary decision problem. Is it the first choice or is it the second choice? And the claim is that to be able to do better than 50%, because if you choose randomly, you would expect to do 50% of the answers correct. To do better than 50%, you have to have enough knowledge about whatever is being spoken about and the ability to reason. So, let us look at a few examples here. This was given by Terry Vinograd himself in 1972. Such sentences are now named after him. So, that is why he has called it a Vinograd schema. So, the first sentence is: the city councilmen refused the demonstrators a permit because they feared violence. So, the key word here is feared essentially, and there are 2 noun phrases here. One refers to the city councilmen and the other refers to the demonstrators essentially. So, you can see that in this example, if I asked you who is they, then the answer would be city councilmen, because they are the ones who are refusing the demonstrators a permit, because they are the ones who are fearing the violence. If you replace feared with advocated, the same sentence with one word changed: the city councilmen refused the demonstrators a permit because they advocated violence. Then you can see that the answer to who is they changes, and now we are talking about the demonstrators. To be able to make this choice, you need some amount of knowledge and some amount of reasoning, without it this is not possible. Who does they refer to? The demonstrators or the councilmen? So, you would give one sentence, one of those 2 sentences to the person being tested, and the same question, the same 2 choice question, and they should be able to choose the correct answer. Here is another example. This was used in the International Joint Conference on AI in 2016. John took the water bottle out of the backpack so that it would be lighter. So, it is the pronoun. Water bottle and backpack are the two noun phrases that we have to decide as to what does that it refer to. So, you can see that in this example, it refers to the backpack. I mean, if you understood how backpacks are and how the stuff that you add to that adds to the weight of the backpack, and if you take out something from the backpack, then the backpack would become lighter. So, you should know all that to be able to answer that question. The other question is, John took the water bottle out of the backpack so that it would be handy essentially. So, clearly saying that the backpack would be handy does not make sense in this situation. So, it must be the bottle essentially. So, what does it refer to? The backpack or the bottle. So, the idea that what Levesque is saying is that you give such tests to a machine, give many such questions to the machine, and these are not tests that you can consult the internet somehow and come up with the answer essentially. Of course, when human beings consult the internet, we make sense of the whatever internet throws back at us, because we have the cognitive abilities. But would the internet have such kind of sentences and questions and their connection to this anaphora resolution problem that we are talking about? It is very unlikely. So, unless the answering entity can figure out what is going on, they would not be able to answer. Here is a similar example. The trophy would not fit in the brown suitcase because it was too small, or the trophy would not fit in the brown suitcase because it was too big. So, clearly in the two sentences it refers to different things. In the first case, in the first sentence it refers to the suitcase too small, and therefore, the trophy is not fitting into it. In the second case, it refers to the trophy because it is too big and it is not fitting into the suitcase. So, you need to be able to create a mental picture of what is happening to be able to answer this question. What does it refer to? The trophy and the suitcase. Here is another example. The lawyer asked the witness a question, but he was reluctant to repeat it. So, he clearly means the lawyer. The lawyer asked the witness a question, but he was reluctant to answer it. So, he clearly refers to the witness, and the distinction comes by your understanding of these two phrases, repeat it or answer it. So, clearly the witness has to answer the question, and therefore, we are saying he was reluctant to answer it, it must be the witness, and the lawyer would have to repeat the question in case it was required. So, then he would be referring to the lawyer. So, who was reluctant, the lawyer or the witness? So, this was a Vinograd schema, which basically shifts that if you want to judge an entity on intelligence, or even if you want to judge it against human beings on intelligence, then this is a test which moves away from the facility of language, the linguistic ability of the agent, because we are often fooled by saying that, oh, this entity is so articulate, it must be intelligent, but we are shifting the focus from language to knowledge, that this entity understands what we are talking about, and in many ways I also think it is a good test. So, we have spoken about inferences a little bit. We will start on references right now, but we will continue it in the next video. Whenever we talk about references, one key word that we often use is ontology. So, when you think about the world, you think of the world in terms of categories. It is a tree, that is the sky, that is the grass, that is a horse, that is a cat, and so on essentially. This process of naming things is sometimes referred to as defining an ontology. What is your vocabulary in terms of which you describe the world? And if you are going to create knowledge representation schemes for machines, that is where we would have to start with essentially. And you would have to start by saying that these are the things that we are talking about. So, if you look at the definition for the word ontology, it comes from philosophy to start with. It says a branch of metaphysics. So, metaphysics was something which people call as philosophy, and in some sense it was something which was separate from science a little bit. So, it was above physics in some sense. So, when you say we are talking about ontology, we are talking about the nature of being essentially, what exists. So, when you say what exists, then obviously we think of entities, a cat exists, a tree exists, and things like that. So, what is out there in the world? A more modern definition is a set of concepts and categories in a subject area or domain that shows their properties and relations between them. So, here we are talking more explicitly about concepts and categories. We mean the same thing with that, basically classes essentially. So, mammal is a class, cats are a class, and so on. And what are the concepts, what are the classes, what are the categories that we will represent in our system when we talk about a particular domain? What are their properties? How will we store them? So, we might say that mammals have 2 eyes, mammals suckle their young, mammals have 2 ears. Whatever the properties that we can talk about mammals would be associated with these categories essentially. And the whole idea, and we will see this later, is compactness, that if you can store the idea at a more general class, then it can be inherited to more specific classes and the relations between them essentially. So, if you say that cat is a mammal and a mammal is an animal, these are relations between categories, and you should be able to make inferences that, for example, a cat is an animal essentially. We will spend a major part of the course making such inferences. A more modern definition given by Gruber 93 was an explicit specification of a conceptualization. It basically means that you are defining formally what is the concepts that you are talking about or conceptualization that you are talking about, and you are giving an explicit specification. This definition has become important in the modern world in which the internet connects all of us together, and if you want to write programs which will do internet commerce, the programs that you will have sites selling to each other, buying from each other, and then you have to define what is it that you are selling, what is it that you are buying, and all that kind of stuff. And you have to give this an explicit specification, so that programs can understand what the website is talking about. So, you might imagine writing a program, and there are such programs already, that you want to buy some product and it will search through many sites and find you the cheapest, the one who is selling it the cheapest essentially. Now, obviously, if you are going to go through all the sites and then you have to go through their products, then you should be able to understand that this is what you are looking for and this is what it is. And programs of course work syntactically, and therefore, you need to have this explicit specification of whatever that you are talking about essentially. So, representation starts with ontology, but we will spend a little bit more time as to how do we create the categories and the concepts that we are talking about. What is the vocabulary in which terms of which we would express our knowledge, but we will do that in the next set. And when we do that, we will start with this whole idea about the mind. So, it is not always that people thought that we have minds essentially, and we will see how this whole notion of a mind came into being, and it is a mind which in some sense allows us to represent or create models of the world and reason with them. So, we will come back and look at this in the next video.